Welcome to today's New York Climate Week webinar on advancing climate action through public-private partnerships. We're pleased at the U.S. Chamber to co-convene this event with our partners at the National Association of Counties. If you have questions throughout the program, I'd like to encourage the audience to please enter them into the chat. Building smart, modern, resilient infrastructure has long been a top priority at the Chamber. We are pleased to see this issue reflected throughout the bipartisan infrastructure package currently being considered by Congress. It is underappreciated that this bill contains more than $100 billion, the most significant federal investment ever in climate and energy innovation to reduce and remove greenhouse gas emissions. We hope that the House will act without delay and pass this critical legislation next Monday. The Chamber has been highlighting the importance of linking public-private resources available to help remove barriers to entry and assist with project and program financing to address our climate and infrastructure needs. Public and private partnerships have been used to advance local infrastructure needs for decades, but only in recent years have these become a tool for addressing environmental goals. Policymakers have struggled to develop and sustain political will to partner with companies in this way. A good friend once told me that if you bring together the best of both the public and private sectors, there's nothing you cannot accomplish. So today we hope to make state and local decision makers more comfortable and align your priorities with P3 concepts and best practices, especially in the climate space. We have an exciting program today, so let's get started. Now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Senior Vice President at the Global Energy Institute, Christopher Guth. Christopher?
Thanks, Chuck. And good afternoon. As a Southern Californian, I am pleased to welcome Congressman Scott Peters, who represents California 52nd District in San Diego. Good afternoon, Congressman Peters. Thanks for joining us to discuss the important role of public-private partnerships in accelerating greenhouse gas emission reductions and promoting resilience. We really appreciate your leadership in developing common ground in the climate space, and we very much appreciate your willingness to collaborate with the Chamber on the climate challenge. Now, I know your schedule is tight, so let's dive in. Now, as Chuck mentioned, next week the House is expected to vote on bipartisan infrastructure framework that includes demonstrations in many needed disciplines, including advanced nuclear, energy storage, solar, and wind. But where can public-private partnerships really help accelerate deployment of solutions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
Well, again, thanks for having me. Thanks for what you're doing. And I'm certainly rooting for the passage of that bill. I would say, the federal government is just starting to imagine how the deployment of private capital can be leveraged. I was also a proponent of a concept that didn't make it in, which was an infrastructure bank. But P3s are more familiar, and they're key to attracting more private capital, technology, expertise, to use private money to fulfill public goals and create public benefits. So you've got the institutional strength of the public sector, but the efficiencies of the private sector, and that's going to deliver better results for consumers. And in the case of clean technologies, for the environment. P3s can especially help in communities where local governments aren't equipped or funded for large-scale deployment of advanced greenhouse gas reduction technologies, but where the communities would benefit from those technologies. So, for example, if you've got a distressed coal community looking to transition to a new energy source, or low-income communities seeking to reap the benefits of community solar, and a good example of P3s in this sector is in energy efficiency. So governments can partner with energy savings companies to improve their energy efficiency with performance-based contracting. And in these arrangements, so the energy services company, their pay is linked directly to the actual energy savings from their product. So they're incentivized to do the work well, so that's how they get paid. And the government can pay the cost back over time rather than putting the money up front. In the budget bill, I fought for the inclusion of funding to support the Department of Energy's loan program offices. And that office uses loans and loan guarantees as a bridge across the valley of death that can otherwise block game-changing, first-of-a-kind technologies from being commercialized. So through partnerships with the private sector, that loan program office of the LPO has returned billions of dollars in interest to American taxpayers. The loss ratio is significantly below that of conventional lenders. We've got 37,000 workers with well-paid jobs, and we've avoided 60 million metric tons of climate warming greenhouse gases. So we should be encouraging more partnerships with the private sector through federal policy. And I think the demonstration funding in the bipartisan bill that you mentioned is an important start. Simultaneously, we have to be establishing proper market incentives, especially through carbon pricing, which I'm a big proponent of, to encourage public-private partnerships that advance low-carbon technologies and remain financially attractive.
Now, knowing your varied interests ranging from bioenergy to carbon capture and storage, what are some of the policy barriers? I mean, you mentioned a few solutions that are pending right now, but what are some of the real barriers to establishing more P3s to address lowering greenhouse gas emissions?
There are some barriers. I think the first one is still unfamiliarity. So the work you're doing to get the word out and show examples of where this work, that's as critical as any piece of legislation, because we want to create the demand for these kinds of fixes. But I've been working on encouraging the use of P3s in the federal government through my bill, like the Repair Act, which would establish an infrastructure bank, as I mentioned, to fund qualified infrastructure projects. They have to meet stringent environmental and economic standards, and would increase the cap on the issuance of private activity bonds by $1 billion. That also incentivizes private investment in infrastructure by allowing qualified activities to be tax exempt. We're also looking at the OMB, the Office of Management Budget, how they score P3s, because the current scoring system of what something costs or what it returns was developed before P3s were common. So the way that OMB treats P3s really reduces the chances of a project being incorporated into an agency's budget or approved by Congress, because OMB will price the government's lifetime commitment to the project in the first year of the contract. And that interpretation of costs makes the P3 looks like the P3 is vastly inflated price tag. That's a structural problem with scoring that affects a lot of things, but in P3s, it's certainly it's not helpful.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. And again, we appreciate your leadership when it comes to innovation, not only on the technology itself, but innovative processes like P3s that can bring that technology to communities around the country, not only to lower greenhouse gas emissions, but also things like wastewater treatment. So we know that you're on a tight schedule this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day and look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thanks for having me, and send me your good ideas and good examples, and we'll work to make this a more popular sport in the federal government.
Hello, so it looks like I am on, and we are going to have a local government perspective. I want to double check that's. Sounds like I'm on. Well, let me get into this with those on the panel next. This is going to be a local government perspective. I'm Jeannie Saylor with Schneider Electric. I'm the Vice President of Government Relations. And we're going to hear next from Commissioner Chris Brown from Montgomery County. I'm sorry, yes, from Montgomery Commissioner Rusty Bell from Campbell County, Wyoming, and Chris Brown, who is the Chief Office in the Office of Energy and Sustainability with Montgomery County, Maryland. All right, now I see you guys. Sorry, I was worried because I couldn't see your faces. Hello and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. You guys, I think, are the star of the show, really, when it comes to public-private partnerships and P3s. And the point of this engagement here today is to learn a little bit more about how it is meaningful for you at the local level. So I guess I want to start by asking the question to turn it over to you and tell us a little bit about how P3s serve you at the local level and for your communities. And maybe we'll start with you, Commissioner.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. For us at the public level, the local government level, it's really important to have that private buy-in. Really, we're in this game together, and for us to be promoting our community and trying to get businesses to come here, really, we're trying to do that for other businesses so that we can have customers that continue to live and be in our community. And so, having the buy-in and asking them what they need, what infrastructure needs do those private industries need, it is super important. And having that real open line of communication on what their needs, how can we help? How can we help with the tools that we have in place for economic development? And then if we don't have those tools in place, how can we go to the next level to help them get what they need to be successful business in our community?
Great. And over to you.
Sure. P3s are important for multiple reasons, not just the use of private capital. For a little context, in Montgomery County, my group is the Department of General Services, and we're responsible for designing, building, and operating the county's buildings, as well as our fleet of vehicles and buses. What we have learned from past experience is that, and also have seen recently with the winter storms in Texas or with the fallout from Hurricane Isaac, that we need to have a plan for climate adaptability, as well as including resilience and robust infrastructure in our plans. So in this light, P3s make a lot of sense for advancing resilient and efficient projects. I would use our efforts around transitioning our bus fleet as an example. No simple matter. We have 3 bus depots with 300 plus buses and 75 routes serving a population of approximately 1 million people. And the buses have to be able to run and serve our population. Certainly more frequent and extreme weather events are foreseeable, and from an infrastructure perspective, something we have to prepare for. So with the use of a P3, we were able to pursue a complex microgrid. And what the P3 enabled for us in this scenario was certainly the mobilization of private capital. And the private funds are more than just keeping our capital in place for other efforts. It really helps mobilize those tax credits and other initiatives from renewable energy projects that as a municipality we cannot otherwise do. And then we're also able to partner with the deep expertise in the field of energy. And that's really a huge benefit for us, and something that the P3 enables is bringing in the people to ensure not only do we have an effective design, but we can operate and always have the equipment up and ready to run when we need it. So for us, a P3 really was a great solution on this particular project and several others as well.
Excellent. So, you've laid out the benefit to communities, and obviously there's a benefit to taxpayers as well when we're talking about, huge infusion of new dollars into infrastructure, and the fact that P3s bring private dollars as well that benefit the community. But given that, right, there's a multitude of private sector stakeholders who do want to come to the table and partner. What advice do you give to those stakeholders for how to navigate the system and bring their ideas, to local government, or bring the opportunity to you and make sure that you know how to access it? Is more important than ever as we look at this huge, monumental infrastructure bill. How do we amplify that further? And what's your advice?
Jeannie, I can start with that. For Campbell County, we're a very coal-reliant community. Around 10% of all the BTUs in the whole country come from Campbell County, small county in Wyoming. And so knowing with the climate conversation that we're having and knowing where the markets are, for us, having that conversation with companies that want to see what we're doing here with the big picture, with carbon capture, storage and sequestration, and utilization. We have things here like the Carbon Safe project, that's looking at storing 50 years of CO2 from power plants or from other sources. We have Atlas Carbon, which uses carbon in a different way, uses coal in a different way. We have the Integrated Test Center that's in Campbell County, which uses a slipstream of flue gas to study how you can actually use that CO2 in a different way instead of discharging that into the atmosphere. So really for us, it's getting information, having that communication with them, so that they can have buy-in to come to a coal-reliant community and actually have a business that where the community can actually in a local government can actually have a conversation about having new businesses that are carbon negative or carbon neutral, and really asking them to accept the fact that we're an all the above approach on energy. Not only are we producing a lot of energy in different ways, but we're also trying to do our part and follow the market of carbon negative and carbon, using carbon to actually combat that in a different way. So it is a little bit strange, a little bit different here, but it's very important. And there's a lot of technology and a lot of dollars that are looking at that. And really, we're on a different level when it comes to other coal-reliant communities on what we have in Campbell County. But really getting that buy-in from those private businesses isn't always as easy as it seems.
Thank you, Commissioner. How about you?
Sure. From our perspective, we have a slightly more aggressive goal around climate change than many other locations. We have an 80% reduction target for GHG by 2027 and 100% by 2035. So these are pretty aggressive goals, and so the use of private partnerships is really beneficial. What we're bringing in again is that expertise and people with a real passion towards helping us achieve these environmental goals. In terms of advice or feedback, I would sort of say, it takes a lot of patience. P3s are a long and arduous process. It takes time to assemble and execute. From the starting point of an open procurement to culminating with a signed agreement can take 12 to 18 months or more, and that's even before you begin design and construction. So having reasonable expectations with the partners is a pretty important step here, because there's often a different pace between the private sector and the government when we can move forward on things, and I think this often leads to frustration or at least nervousness from the private sector partners. Another point from an energy perspective and innovative efforts there is, just how do you work on something that it tends to lead towards to scope creep or really missing the mark of what you wanted to do. And I think one of the things that stands out to me with some of the great partners we've had the opportunity to work with in the past is that there's been a real flexibility and a real coming together to be creative on these projects. And I've found that it's a really hard balance to make sure that you're staying within scope, but also being creative in achieving these innovative outcomes that we're all looking for.
Thank you so much for both of those answers. I mean, I have to say your responses are exciting about what's possible and what's actually happening at the local levels. And you shared some advice and you highlighted a few of the sort of negative challenges that exist, including, the time and the sort of patience that needs to come along. So you've hinted to the next question, which is, what are some of the barriers that you face in sort of taking on these projects and executing them? In addition to just the time and this long cycle nature of things, what are some of the other barriers? And if you don't mind, add to that answer any ideas for how to fix them, or where we might, how we might work together to reduce those barriers.
Sure. I mean, I think it's important to view public-private partnerships for what they really are, which is a long-term relationship. One of the best ways to overcome the barriers that seem to affect the work that we're doing is taking the time at the beginning to really understand what opportunities exist. As I mentioned earlier, it's a time-consuming process. Maybe you're not pursuing a bus depot microgrid, but look across your portfolio and think ahead. Are you looking at other microgrids, other continuity of government opportunities and projects? Or if you're using power purchase agreements, don't just look at one rooftop, look at all of your rooftops. I think it's in everybody's best interest to set up these relationships for repeat performances. What I find is oftentimes many projects are listed as a pilot or trying something out for the first time, but really we should view these projects as the first of many and set up our relationships to work that way. When we're talking about making a positive impact on climate change, the key is not just to reduce barriers, but to set yourself up for scale and pace as well.
Yeah, that's great. Chris really hit on some good things there. Patience is really important especially when sometimes technology is moving faster than some of the construction and some of the processes that take place with those partnerships, especially in Campbell County when we're able to work with private partners and put in for example EDA grants or Department of Energy grants. And sometimes that technology actually moves incredibly fast and might be moving faster than what the construction process is taking. So allowing some flexibility in what you're doing and in what that construction is actually going to accomplish, to be flexible in what the technology is going to be coming. And so another barrier for us is really, like I said earlier, just really having market buy-in to an all of the above energy strategy that includes carbon capture, storage and sequestration and utilization, instead of talking more about carbon neutral and carbon negative, instead of always saying that for us it's really hard because we're sitting on 25 billion tons of recoverable carbon that can be used in a low cost way, but also can be carbon neutral, carbon negative. And so for us, it's a little different, allowing those or asking those private partners to accept that use of that in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So I'm going to add another question. I think we have time for another question to both of you. And I want to hone in on something that you highlighted, which is, the sort of public aspect of this. So obviously at the core, I think this is about the community and serving the community. That's what your role is to serve the community there and advance projects that do that. And I guess my question is about the public piece of that, educating the public when they happen and when they're executed and when they happen well. We recently there was a recent event in Montgomery, groundbreaking for the electric bus depot. That was a public event. The media has covered other events at the local level on and off. But what do you think is the key to sort of publicizing, getting some bang for your buck, educating the community about how these are working for them? I mean, do you have any secret sauce, secret advice about sort of how to amplify things at the local level to make sure your community is hearing about it? And is there anything more that you could use from your private sector partners on that front to help get more public recognition for these projects?
Yeah, I can start if you want.
Sure, please.
I think that we've had a lot of partnerships also here with the University of Wyoming and School of Energy Research, which has a lot of private partners also, including some of the power co-ops and things. And so, when we do projects here, we have some of these large scale carbon capture projects that are happening. Having all types of media is important. I mean, we've had town halls, we've had articles in the paper, articles in in all kinds of magazines, things like that. But really having your private companies that are part of this and have the buy-in, it really is important to get not only to their employees, because a lot of them are large employers, but to other private businesses. And really the Chamber of Commerce helps a lot in that. We have a business advocacy committee that I'm a part of. So getting that message out to 700 businesses in the Chamber of Commerce really does help, because mostly, they can then get that out to their employees, which are part of the community, and help understand that relationship between, we're not just spending tax dollars to spend tax dollars, we're spending them to actively promote the community and build a more positive future for the community as a whole.
Excellent.
Yeah, and so from our perspective, or at least from my perspective in this conversation, the private sector wants to market their good activities, for future repeatability or future gain. But we also have to do it to make sure that our residents are proud of the work that we're doing, proud of the county they live in. And another angle that I was thinking about in this question, Jeannie, was that, we also have the role of regulating business. And in many ways, part of what we're doing with our energy initiatives and our P3s there are establishing that it can be done, and trying to lead by example as well, not just asking businesses to come to more strict climate change regulation, but to actually show that we can do it as well.
Well, with that, I'll wrap this up. And I just want to say, we frequently think about the fact that, energy policy really and climate policy is really happening at the local level, and through the leadership and work that both of you and other communities are doing, other counties are doing around the country. And it's so important to highlight those wonderful best practices. I thank you for your participation today on the panel and for the advice. And we all have to keep up the good work. And I hope that it continues to spur further conversations about P3s and what it means, and how we're going to all get to work together across the country to do more good things. So thank you both for your time today. And with that, I am going to turn it back to, I believe, Marty and Juan Macias.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeannie, and thanks everybody for joining us. It's a really exciting conversation we're able to have here today. I'm really pleased to welcome Juan Macias, who's the CEO of Alpha Structure, to join us this afternoon. Now, Juan's a veteran with 30 years of experience in the electrical transmission and distribution areas with industry-leading companies. And he's able to pair his expertise of energy markets and technology. So, Juan, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Now, Alpha Structure is a really interesting joint venture of the Carlyle Group, one of the largest global asset management companies, and Schneider Electric, world leader in energy technology. So to start with, I'd like to ask you to describe the collaboration between Schneider and Carlyle, and what's the value they saw in launching this joint venture?
Well, look, it's a fantastic story, right? That really begins a decade ago for Schneider Electric, really at the core of the mission of Schneider Electric, around really leading and playing an important role in the energy transition. And this story begins with Schneider developing a series of technologies, control and automation technologies, that would enable the decentralization and decarbonization of the energy system. So being able to install solar, storage, other types of energy resources, fuel cells, integrate those in a safe, reliable way. And so that's where the story began. Schneider Electric began taking these technologies to the marketplace more than a decade ago. We've executed on the Schneider side over 300 microgrids around the world. So the company developed a really broad know-how and expertise around the design of behind the meter microgrids. And that really, in the 2017 timeframe, I would tell you that evolved into us thinking of why are microgrids not scaling in a faster way in the U.S. and around the world. And look, we identified 3 areas, right? One, capital and capital allocation to these types of assets, the complexity of undertaking these types of projects, and the risk associated with these. So then we turned the notion to looking at the business model, right? And we're looking at, okay, how can we meet the customer's needs? How can we meet those desired outcomes of decarbonization, greenhouse gas reduction, improvements in resilience, reliability, making capacity available, energy capacity as we electrify more. And that's where we began looking at energy as service models. Right at that time, we began having a relationship with the colleagues at Carlisle. Tremendous alignment in terms of the purpose of the companies. And we came together at the beginning of 2019 to create a purpose-built company, which is called AlphaStructure. And the purpose of the company is to design, build, finance, own, and operate behind the meter energy assets. So we are a partner to our customers that will design bespoke, tailor-made energy solutions to meet the client's specific needs, and do so with zero capital expense to the customer through a long-term power purchase agreement that can be 15, 20, 25 years. With a contract structure that will enable all of this to happen. So we're super excited to be working between those 2 parents. We've created the company, we're executing the first set of projects, and just really an exciting time to be part of the energy transition.
Great. So let me ask you, the commissioner and the chief kind of helped us understand some of the benefits of these public-private partnerships. But for those who aren't as familiar with it, let's almost take a step back. And maybe if I could ask you just to help explain what are the foundational elements of a successful public-private partnership?
Look, the foundational elements really is first of all a clear understanding of the desired outcomes, right? What are we trying to accomplish in the project? Being able to really understand the construct of a public-private partnership, foundational to those elements, and what makes it successful is that the particular entity, the particular government entity, it has really the policies in place and makes the policy adjustments available in order to be able to enter in such an agreement, because this is not a wide practice across the country. So are the procurement policies in place? Are the legal and risk policies in place and capabilities in place to be able to enter into a long-term agreement in order to execute such a project? So being able to have those fundamentals in place to create a partnership that can be negotiated, structured, negotiated, and executed across what sometimes is multiple disciplines, departments within a particular government agency. So I think those are really core and fundamental, that those processes and authorities are in place at the particular entity.
Then let's go ahead and get a little bit more granular then.
Sure.
Chief Brown, you described the partnership that you guys just launched in Montgomery County, Maryland.
Yep.
I happen to live 5 minutes from where the project is, and been a Montgomery County resident most of my life. So glad to see such an exciting project getting up off the ground. But I wonder if you could maybe dig in a little more into the details on what makes that agreement unique, what makes the partnership unique, how you think that might be, how you could replicate that. Again, what really made it attractive to AlphaStructure, and how's it going?
Look, this is a really an exciting example and project, right? And maybe I'll just take a step back and look at a little higher level, right? So transportation is one of the key sectors that as a nation we have to decarbonize, right? So medium and heavy duty vehicles, we have 23 medium and heavy duty vehicles, combustion engine vehicles that have to be converted in order to make an impact. Within that, we have 78,000 transit fleet vehicles that of which only less than 3,000 have already been converted. So one, we have all these different transit agencies and the different governments making a commitment that we need to make collectively as a nation to make that transition from diesel vehicles and CNG vehicles over to zero emission vehicles. And as Chris mentioned before, Montgomery County, I think, is a leader in making some very aggressive commitments in their greenhouse gas reduction objectives. So what makes this project unique? First of all, I would mention that making a transition from diesel vehicles to zero emission vehicles is a pretty significant transformation. So it is not a one-for-one conversion, because a zero emission vehicle system is really that. It is a much more integrated system. So you have to think of the vehicle, you have to think of the route design, you have to think of the charging concept and charging infrastructure, and then you have to think of the energy infrastructure behind those charging requirements. You have to think of the level of service that you're offering, so the resilience level that you need in order to ensure the service to the ridership, which is paramount. And then you need to make sure that you're fueling and delivering that energy. Then that energy is green in order to really be assured that we are achieving those greenhouse gas reduction objectives. So really, this what's unique about this is partnering with the county and all of the various agencies and team members to really conceptualize how this transition is being made, what all the different elements of this are, and having together with them an integrated approach of how we iterated this technical design. So that is how we achieved the technical concept that we're executing. And then in parallel, we're also working on how we structured this project and the underwriting of this project. That means, taking into account all of the tax credits that were available in order to optimize the equation. It takes into account how we're working with Pepco on also and working closely with them on a portion of this asset that will participate in a battery energy storage concept that they have going on, and really creating the contracting structure in order to be able to underwrite such an ambitious project. So really a holistic approach to a very complex transition from diesel to zero emission vehicles.
Again, really exciting opportunity that you guys are launching here. Our local and state governments are critical partners in these.
Absolutely.
Course. But of course, we're in Washington, D.C. So can you help us understand what are some of the policy enablers at the federal level that can help these types of projects succeed?
Look, a few things that are very important. One, when we look at our energy at our energy regulatory policy, we are state by state, utility by utility. So as we look to accelerate this energy transition as a country, and this fleet transition is just one part of it, right? There's other parts of this transition that are necessary for both public and private entities. So one area that I think would be of great benefit in terms of the federal government and the Department of Energy is really some leadership around the facilitation of interconnect agreements and the speed and ability and predictability of how we interconnect these decentralized systems across the country into the respective utility infrastructure. So I think that is a very important one. I think looking at how the different grants and incentives are laid out in order to facilitate public-private partnerships and to think of new ways. Maybe there's an ability to do direct payment option in lieu of ITCs, right? This would really simplify the way that an investor can apply these benefits, right? And we can accelerate and optimize the cost of these projects. So those are a couple of thoughts that so the federal government can really make a big difference.
Excellent. Well, Alpha Structure, of course, is going to take a lead role here as an energy as a service solution provider here. Do you see other gaps in services that the private sector can fill in a similar way?
Look, I think these transitions, as I mentioned, are complex, right? So I think the private sector can and should be a partner to the different jurisdictions and entities in planning such transitions, thinking of innovative ways, both from technology, business models, and transition in order to be able to facilitate and accelerate this transition. The challenges are complex, right? Whether you're talking about the energy system, you're talking about the transit system, water, wastewater system, decarbonizing the grid is not one solution. It's going to be a multitude of solutions. And I think the private sector can play a role not only in executing energy as service and public-private partnerships, but I think it has to play a role in terms of technical innovation, being a partner in order to be able to conceptualize, plan, and execute these complex transitions, and be a partner to the different entities with ideas on, okay, how do you transition a traditional way of doing things? How do we work with the federal government in order to put ideas on the table of how do we modernize our policies in order to be able to execute projects in a more efficient way, in a more cost-effective way?
Great. Well, you and Alpha Structure, of course, they're taking a leading role in this concept or the area of the energy transition. What advice would you have for others that want to get into this space, this a public-private partnership space to feed this energy transition?
Hey, I go back again and just reinforcing this is integrated thinking, right? This is systems thinking. So the advice I would give both to the entities that have to make these transformations, as well as to the broader community of technologists and construction firms, the whole ecosystem of the industry. In order to execute these projects successfully, it is about integrated systems thinking. And we as an industry community have to come together in support of our customers in having an integrated system thinking approach if we are going to have a chance to be successful and make the carbon reduction advancements that we need to make as an overall nation. These are not point solutions of buying things.
Right. Well, I think that's a really important really important point, an important aspect, that this is it's a complicated area that doesn't it does take some more debate. I shouldn't say debate. We know we need to be operating or moving in this direction, but it does require a lot more people getting engaged in the overall topic and to be solution providers. There's a lot of energy and climate debate going on in Congress now. It's not going to end anytime soon, and I'm pleased to say that the Chamber of Commerce is going to take a leadership role in those conversations. But I will say, Juan, it's going to be exciting to watch your projects proceed and grow, and we hope that you'll work with us and stay in close contact so we can see how.
Look, it's for the broader business community, which you represent, right? I mean, we've spent some time speaking today about public-private partnerships, but when you look at decarbonizing our industrial base, right? Decarbonizing our fleets, right? I mean, like I said, there's 23 million medium and heavy duty vehicles, and it's one of the largest emitting sectors, right? So, our broader business community also needs help, and just the same comments of applying, in the discussion of public customers apply to the private customers as well, right?
Indeed.
So significant transitions for both our public and private sectors.
Right. Well, Juan, we really appreciate you taking so much time, to spend with us and give us a sense of how the company is doing, but also, on the role that we need to be playing in this P3 space and the energy as service providers and all the rest. So again, thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you. Take care.
Chuck, I will turn things back to you. Chuck Chadovitz.
Thank you, Marty and Juan. I'd like to thank again our co-conveners at NACo and Representative Peters and all of our speakers from Montgomery and Campbell counties, from Schneider Electric, the Carlisle Group, and Alpha Structure, to discuss P3s and how we can promote and scale them in the climate space. And thank you to the audience for joining us during this Climate Week event. Have a great rest of your day.